Real estate is the physical bedrock of the U.S. economy, making up roughly 16% of the national gross domestic product. While a standard business cycle runs its course over 5 to 7 years, real estate operates on a massive 10 to 18-year wavelength. The difference is the construction lag, the years it takes to plan, permit, and build physical assets. Within that long cycle, the California housing market deviates significantly from the national trend, experiencing price swings that are far more volatile than the U.S. average. This volatility reflects a market where the supply of new housing is no longer capable of expanding to meet shifts in demand. Understanding the state's affordability crisis requires an analysis of the mechanics of market elasticity. Every real estate asset is defined by one absolute constraint: immobility. You cannot move a plot of land to a better market. Because the land is fixed, its financial value is almost entirely dictated by the surrounding environment. It captures the externalities of its location. High-performing schools, transit networks, and tech hubs are positive externalities. They drive localized demand upward. When this highly localized demand encounters geographic and legal barriers to building new physical supply, the market becomes inelastic. Fixed geography combined with intense local demand creates a structural pressure cooker. When demographic shifts occur, massive price instability follows. The engine of housing demand starts with the standard equation for population change: births minus deaths plus net migration. But population alone doesn't buy houses. Demand is driven by headship rates, the exact frequency at which individuals form independent households. Despite recent domestic outmigration away from California, the housing market hasn't collapsed. The sheer number of new households forming easily outpaces the number of people leaving. This chart compares homeownership by generation. We are currently facing the baby boom inheritance, where an aging demographic holds an outsized share of the existing single-family housing stock. At the exact same time, millennials are entering their peak household formation years, generating massive demand for entry-level and move-up housing. The delayed transition of the boomer housing stock creates a severe inventory mismatch against this incoming wave of buyers. The headlines focus on people leaving the state, but these underlying demographic realities ensure a relentless rightward push on the housing demand curve. This is a standard economic graph, plotting a downward-sloping demand curve intersecting an upward-sloping supply curve. Where they cross is the market equilibrium. The slope of that supply curve represents price elasticity, the ability of builders to rapidly construct new units when prices rise. Let's introduce a 10% surge in regional housing demand. In a normal, elastic market, as the demand curve shifts right, equilibrium moves along a gentle slope. Quantity expands 7%, and the price rises only 3%. Healthy construction normally absorbs demand. But in California, the supply curve pivots upward until almost perfectly vertical, a highly inelastic market. We run the same 10% demand surge against this steep curve. Quantity expands just 1%, while the price skyrockets 9%. The exact same economic stimulus produced vastly different mathematical realities. In a severely constrained market, positive economic signals fail to build new housing. They simply inflate the cost of existing assets. What specific legal frameworks force California's supply curve into this steep, vertical position? The first major constraint is local exclusionary zoning. By intentionally limiting density to single-family homes, zoning concentrates financial benefits to existing owners, while pushing the cost of scarcity onto non-residents. The second constraint is the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. Originally designed to protect the environment from large public works, CEQA is frequently weaponized by local opposition to indefinitely delay private housing development. This administrative delay drastically increases capital costs and risk, making new supply financially unfeasible, even when market prices are incredibly high. The third and most uniquely Californian constraint is Proposition 13. Passed by voters to cap property tax assessments, Proposition 13 originated from intense political backlash against skyrocketing tax bills. But it created a powerful lock-in effect. Longtime homeowners refused to sell because moving would trigger a massive reassessment based on current market value, freezing the existing inventory. It also creates a severe municipal fiscal distortion. Cities are financially incentivized to zone for retail to capture sales tax, rather than zoning for housing. Together, these three forces, zoning, CEQA, and Proposition 13, act as iron clamps. They artificially lock the state's housing supply into an unyielding vertical posture. California currently faces an estimated shortfall of 1 to 3 million housing units. Common political solutions to this affordability crisis often rely on demand-side subsidies, like first-time homebuyer tax credits or down payment assistance. We can map this on our inelastic supply curve. As government subsidies inject new capital into the system, the demand curve shifts to the right. The equilibrium dot slides straight up the vertical supply line. The y-axis, representing price, goes up. The x-axis, representing the quantity of housing, remains utterly unchanged. Providing buyers with more money in a market where it is illegal to build more homes simply allows them to bid the exact same asset up to a higher price. Without supply elasticity, demand-side interventions fail to solve the affordability crisis. They actively subsidize its acceleration. Price controls, like statewide rent caps, protect incumbent tenants from short-term displacement, but they do nothing to address the aggregate regional scarcity. The consensus among economists is clear. The only durable solution to the affordability crisis is to physically flatten the supply curve. Recent state-level interventions, such as Senate Bills 9 and 35, are aggressive attempts to bypass local political blockades. These laws aim to remove regulatory friction, allowing builders to respond to price signals with actual construction. Transitioning an entire state's regulatory framework takes decades. This shift, occurring alongside the transition of the boomer housing stock, will define the state's housing inventory over the coming decades. The physical immobility of land determines a property's value, but it is the policy choices of a society that dictates a market's elasticity, deciding whether economic growth builds a city up or simply prices its citizens out.